Chapter 2. The high school orchestra room was a buzz of activity as the students prepared to go on stage for the fall concert.
Did you see her skirt? It's like a granny dress.
I know. It's like everything she wears is from a yard sale.
14-year-old Jessica Diane Ravenwolf pretended not to hear the comments spoken behind her back. She bent over her violin case, slowly taking the instrument out of its velvety blue lining. Jessica's skirt was old, made of a black fabric that was stiff and rough. Her blouse was too big, and her red hair was straight and unstyled. Jessica rosined the bow, trying to think of something to say to the sophomore girls. They had a concert to worry about. Why did they care what her skirt looked like? Mr. Baker began calling attendance. If the concert didn't impact her grade, Jessica would have stayed home. The students responded to the roll call. "Felicia Lee Jones," Mr. Baker called out. "Felicia, we have 3 minutes. Where is Felicia?" Lee didn't respond. Mr. Baker called her name again, his corpulent face red with frustration. "I'll go get her," Jessica called out, placing her violin in its case. Jessica exited the orchestra room and walked through the darkened school. Her black dress shoes were too tight on her feet, making it awkward to walk as she traversed the empty hallways. The corridors were eerily silent and cold. She had one guess where her friend was hiding. Jessica entered the girls' lavatory on the far side of the cafeteria, away from the parents and visitors waiting for the concert to begin.
"Lee?
Is anyone with you?"
Lee's voice replied. Her voice echoed across the yellow tile.
No. We go on in 3 minutes. Baker's gonna fail you.
You have to see what I drew.
The door swung open, revealing a Sharpie masterpiece. The beige metal was covered in trees and flowers, intertwined with mushrooms, and a fat caterpillar smoking a hookah. The excited artist stepped out of the stall. Like Jessica, Lee was raised on food stamps and drive-thru nuggets. Unlike Jessica, Lee had found her own confident alternative style to mask her upbringing. The orchestra dress code mandated that all girls wear a black skirt, nylons, dress shoes, and a white blouse. Lee's required nylons were fishnets, her skirt fringed, and her boots black with a dozen buckles. Lee's hair color changed daily. For the concert, she went with tasteful blonde curls streaked in violet.
"Lee, it's beautiful, but you're gonna get in so much trouble."
"But it's art, Jessie." 1 minute, I just need to finish the trees.
Jessica grabbed her friend's hand. "I'm not letting you fail high school. You're late." Lee tucked the Sharpie into her boot and followed her friend. The teens traveled down to the music wing. Jessica sighed in relief as they reached the band room door. The room was still a wild cacophony of students.
"You need to learn to not be afraid of getting in trouble."
Lee paused outside the door.
"Like your hair. We can dye it. Please let me dye it."
"My mom will kill me,"
Jessica replied as they entered the room. The air was hotter and smellier than before.
"Mr. Baker, I'm here,"
Lee shouted, making her way over to her bass. Jessica went to retrieve her violin from the other side of the room. She froze when she saw her case. The violin was cracked in the center. Someone had stepped on the instrument and smashed its face. Jessica picked it up in disbelief. Jagged wooden pieces slid inside the carcass of the instrument. It was completely irreparable.
"Mr. Baker!"
Jessica called out, looking around wildly. She cradled the instrument and walked slowly to her teacher.
"Mr. Baker!"
He seemed not to hear her.
"Mr. Baker!"
Jessica shouted.
"Somebody smashed my violin!"
Mr. Baker took one look at the instrument and shook his head. "You teens are so irresponsible. We don't have time for this. Lee has already made us 5 minutes late to curtain."
"But this is a problem."
"We will deal with this in school tomorrow."
"But I don't even know who did it."
Jessica gestured to the broken pieces. "We will figure it out later." Mr. Baker lifted his pile of music. "I'm so sorry, Jessica, but there isn't time."
"But the concert?"
she asked. Mr. Baker didn't respond. He called for the students to line up for the stage. They shuffled into their practiced order. Jessica turned to Lee. The tiny girl hefted a bass violin taller than she. "What happened?" Lee asked.
"Someone stepped on my violin and Baker isn't doing anything about it."
Shh! Mr. Baker shushed her. He walked up and spoke softly and quickly. Look, I know you are upset, and normally we would deal with this right away, but I have an audience full of parents. Tomorrow, okay?
But,
he turned to the group. Complete silence! I am opening the backstage door. Jessica took a step back, her eyes scanning the group of her classmates. The other teens ignored her as they walked out on stage. The cello section shuffled through the door, and Jessica put her shattered instrument back into its case. Jessica sat on a metal folding chair staring at the floor. She scratched her right shoulder blade. It always itched when she was upset. Through the tinny orchestra room speaker, Mr. Baker welcomed parents and friends to the concert. The orchestra played their tuning A and launched into the full concert. Jessica curled up in the chair, drawing her knees to her chin. Mozart and Vivaldi danced through her ears. She waited until the final applause, then stood up, grabbed her instrument case, and ran out the door. Pushing through the sea of parents, Jessica sought her mom. Her mother found her first. You weren't on stage. Lily Vance was a rotund, tired woman. Her hair was a pale blonde, cut short to the sides of her face. I'll explain in the car. Jessica looked away. Please, let's just go.
Hey, Jessie, wait!
Lee caught up with her.
Hi, Miss Vance.
It's nice to see you, Lee.
We're going to get sundaes,
Lee said.
Can Jess go with us?
Mom, please? Jessica asked. Can I go? Jess, I'm tired, Lily said. I don't want you to stay out late. Lee, who's driving?
Kyle, my brother.
Lee smiled.
He's a really good driver and...
No, Lily interjected. I'm sure your older brother is a good driver, but no, Jessica, we're going home. Jessica sighed. See you at school tomorrow, she said. Jessica trailed after her mother, walking through the double doors into the fall air. What happened? Lily asked as they arrived at the rust-lined Jeep Cherokee. Jessica took a deep sigh, putting her case in the back seat. Someone stepped on my violin. It's broken. Who did it? Lily started the car. I don't know. Where were you? In the restroom with Lee, stopping her from being dumb and ruining her high school career. That girl is trouble. You always pick trouble. What did Mr. Baker say? He was too worried about the concert. Said we'd deal with it tomorrow. No one's going to fess up to breaking it. You realize that, Lily said. You need to live with the consequences of your negligence. I really wouldn't call it negligence. My violin was in the case. I walked out for just a minute. Someone opened the case. Jessica crossed her arms, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. The car's blinker ticked in rhythm as her mother pulled onto the main road. No, that's life, Jess. If you don't take caution to protect yourself and your things, someone will step on you. I feel stepped on, Jessica mumbled, chewing on the inside collar of her jacket. And you're not helping. I'm not yelling at you. Lily's voice was icy. Jessica didn't answer. And another thing, I don't want you riding around with Lee and her brother. He's a stoner idiot. Mom, that's not fair. He's 19 and not in college, and does he even have a job? Jessica didn't have a reply. Her mother was right. She kept silent. That violin was very expensive, Lily continued. I'm not buying you a new one, and I don't want you asking your dad for help either. But, Jessica sat up, without an instrument, I can't be in the orchestra. At the beginning of the year, Baker said that the music department lost funding, so they couldn't get any more spare instruments. There are none. I'm sorry. The streetlights cast long, pale lines of orange across Lily's face. But this is academic. I can ask Dad for a new violin. You know how I feel about you asking your father and Carrie Ann for handouts. He's my father, so it's not a handout. They can afford it. Why won't you let my father help me more? You need to learn not to be careless, Lily growled. This isn't a talk about money. It's about life lessons. And this discussion is over. Jessica turned back to the solace of the glass window. Any other teenage girl would have cried, but Jessica had buried all her tears a long time ago.